so many aftershocks, all powerful aftershocks. It was very scary. I even don't want to remember that day.
On the morning of April 25th, 2015, a 7.8 magnitude earthquake hit Gorkha, Nepal, not far from the capital city of Kathmandu. Another followed on May 12th. Together, they killed more than 8,600 people and left over 22,000 injured.
Nearly 1 million buildings are damaged severely. It was a pretty strong, violent earthquake.
When these kinds of natural disasters happen, first responders need to know where to go and how to get there quickly. But that's not always easy.
One of the big differences between US and countries like Nepal is we don't have good maps. If you look at Kathmandu, the navigation is a nightmare. You don't have house numbers. Sometimes you spend hours to reach to your destination. Imagine you have to bring somebody to hospital, and you are counting every minute. The navigation is super important, and that is particularly true in case of disaster because every minute is important after a disaster situation. When we were hit by the earthquake, many of the earthquake districts were not mapped well. They didn't know where to go, how to go, whether there is a road. We desperately needed a map.
The geography of Nepal really created a lot of challenges for disaster responders. Lots of people live in small villages that are only accessible by foot. If you don't know the footpath to take or you don't know what size vehicle you can take in there, it's useless. In order to know where to get help to people in need, we needed to first put those people on the map and see where they were living. So something like OpenStreetMap was really invaluable to disaster responders like the Red Cross.
OpenStreetMap is a free and accessible map of the world. Think of it like Wikipedia for maps. You can edit it, I can edit it, and it basically reflects the world around us. The map that we're trying to build in OpenStreetMap these days is a living, breathing document.
In OpenStreetMap, you can make changes. You can improve it.
So humanitarian mapping really dates back to 2004 with the Boxing Day tsunami in the Indonesian Ocean. When that earthquake and then later tsunami hit, it took weeks for actual maps of any value to be made.
But the mapping done on site by trained volunteers showed the potential benefits if online participants could also contribute.
Fast forward to 2010 and the Haiti earthquake, there was no OpenStreetMap existing. And there was a bunch of people that were impassioned to do their little bit. So the earthquake happened, and immediately 600 volunteers from all around the world started mapping at Port-au-Prince. And very quickly in Port-au-Prince, the map filled out. In a little over a month or so, it was about 1 million edits. 3 years later, the Typhoon Haiyan in the Philippines, the storm was so big, and we could sort of see it coming, that humanitarian mappers started mapping 2 days before. Over the course of the next 2 months, 1,800 people contributed 4.5 million edits. So you're seeing this growth 3 years later of the number of edits.
In OpenStreetMap, we learn from every disaster what went good, where are the things we could improve, and we try to improve that in the next disaster.
Local residents and international agencies like the World Bank knew a big quake was surely coming, given the geology of the region.
People knew that, the earthquake is coming in Nepal, but they didn't know when it was coming. Map is a part of preparation for any disaster. If you look at the traditional way of disaster preparedness, what it is, you give training to army, you give training to police, firefighters, which is good. We need to continue to do that. You also need to prepare in terms of information.
Fast forward again to 2015 and the Nepal earthquake. And there's been a lot of effort mapping in Nepal for many years now.
After the Nepal earthquake, nearly 9,000 people from all over the world contributed to mapping. We got more than 2,000 people just within the first couple of days.
During the following 5 weeks of the response, 1.4 million buildings were traced, with volunteers documenting up to 75 buildings per hour.
We were doing 1 million edits a day. We basically made the amount of data that's in the map of Nepal 15 times bigger.
I met up with Mikkel Marin, one of the founders of the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap project in Washington, D.C. This was just a few days after another serious quake, this one in Ecuador. How does somebody who's not on the ground contribute?
Anyone, anywhere can contribute as part of the OpenStreetMap community. So this is the OpenStreetMap website. It's pretty simple for anyone to get started and sign up. Dozens of people working on the same area at the same time, and they're not stepping on each other's toes. Square myself. When you're ready to contribute, you click the Edit with ID editor. This brings us back to the OpenStreetMap site. I'm zooming in. Can add a building right here. I'll add in a road. Starting from this point, follow along the path of the road. And the idea is to work through the entire area in that boundary of that tile. You do that for the entire grid square, then once you're done, click Save, and it's now part of OpenStreetMap.
So could you show us somewhere on the ground in Ecuador where there's been a substantive change due to these efforts?
Just picked a place called La Providencia. This is what was there before, nothing at all, and all of this has been added.
So is it possible to do this work without the help of the crowd?
People are essential, and the network is essential. We need people to spend time and effort on this. It takes a human eye, both to look at satellite imagery and accurately understand what's there, and especially to apply local knowledge.
Today, thousands of so-called armchair mappers around the world log on and contribute to OpenStreetMap both before and after disasters. This graphic shows some of the millions of edits made online in 2013. But sometimes mapping happens on-site and in person. In late 2015, both Nama and Dale were in Washington, D.C. for a mapathon.
A mapathon is a gathering of people. So basically everybody is mapping a city, and this is an opportunity to meet fellow mappers face-to-face, interact, learn from each other, share experience.
We've had events where there's 5 people.
Everybody is mapping a city, and this is an opportunity to meet fellow mappers face-to-face, interact, learn from each other, share experience.
We've had events where there's 5 people.
Everybody is mapping a city together. This is an opportunity to meet people.
We've had events where there's 9
fellow mappers face-to-face, interact, learn from each other, share experience.
We've had events where there's 5 people.
Everybody is mapping a city together. This is an opportunity to meet people.
But for all the invaluable online and remote work, more detailed data must be added. That is mappers out on the street.
Can you see this?
So we actually go out and go out and more detailed data must be added. From the key or from Australia. You can map it like you around topic line. And when I say map, I mean that every building, every tourist range, every fire hydrant, every telephone pole, everything.
What I really love about mapping efforts and mapping story is that it's people coming together from a really positive place and working together to help their own neighborhood, or it could be to help somebody all the way across the world.
And there is a big
OpenStreetMap really helped us. We were able to see whether these villages existed, whether there was damage to houses, and whether people were even still there. people check these maps every day, and we're able to get the right aid to the right people quickly.
Knowing that that map, that somebody in the field is going to look at the map for 1 second to make a decision and move on. That 1 second made their job 10 minutes easier. That for me is an exciting thing.
A lot of people, people need to do it for somebody in the field. Even if it's not able to trying to save lives of people, maybe somebody else.
That 1 second made
Inside
their
that
job
person,
10 minutes easier. That for me is an exciting thing.
a lot of people, that's amazing. Even if it's not able to trying to save lives of people, maybe somebody else.
That 1 second made
Inside
their
that
job
person,
10 minutes easier. That for me is an exciting thing.
a lot of people, that's amazing. Even if it's not able to trying to save lives of people, maybe somebody else. Inside that person,
That for me is an exciting thing.
How it works? How it works? Lighting is easy.
Yeah, I'll probably just be there a day, maybe 2, and
Also, habis tu medicine ni. Ini aja deh. Kita apa lagi?
start getting working on this.
Yeah, because I know that you'll bring it down.
Good morning. My name is Gaurav Thapa, and I work at Kathmandu Living Labs. As a geographer and an OSM advocate, I'm thrilled actually, to be your master of ceremony for this inaugural session. We have a wonderful group of people gathered here, and to get things started, what better person to call upon than the founder of OSM in Nepal and pioneer of OSM in the world, pretty much, as he's the first person to do his dissertation on OSM, his PhD dissertation, Dr. Nama Burathoki. So, Nama, your drive, passion, and zeal is the real reason why we're all here, and I would like you to come up on stage to give the conference overview and welcome remarks. And so I would like to invite Nama, founder and executive director of Kathmandu Living Labs, to come up on stage and give his conference overview and welcome remarks.
Good morning. Namaste, everybody. Can you make it a little bigger? Okay. Some 100 years ago, this man asked a question, a very simple but deep question. And his question was this. What is the question? Yes. So how can you collect and organize the world's knowledge? The question seems to be pretty simple, but I think is very important. So he understood the value of knowledge distributed among individuals, groups, and communities. And then imagined if we can collect that knowledge and make it available to the society, that would be the beginning of the transformation. He imagined, if a farmer in the rural village in Nepal can learn from a farmer in Uganda, a National Planning Commission officials, when they can see the local observations by the citizens and the development activities, what will happen? That's the kind of imagination he had. But unfortunately, there was no technology, no tools to collect that information. How would he collect that? Where would he store that information, that data? How would he process and share? There was no technology, no tools. But during the last 100 years, we have made impressive progress. We discovered computers that allows us to collect, organize, share, process information today. We invented internet and a variety of other technologies. So the development, particularly during the last 15 years, is amazing. I remember when I was in school, in Nepal, there is an examination called School Living Certificate Examination. I needed to take a picture. And I still remember the whole class had to walk 5 hours to get to a person who had a camera. Probably there was only 1 or 2 people who had camera. This guy was a retired British Army, and he was the only one who had a camera in the entire villages. To take a picture, 5 hours of walk. But today, we all do have cameras. We all are photographers. A video, taking videography was just, within the control of few people, trained videographers until, just a few years ago. But today, we do have YouTube. And I just looked at the statistics yesterday and it says every minute there are 300 hours equivalent of videos being uploaded to the YouTube. Every minute. We all are videographers. The content is, if you have rich content, it's very likely that your video will be watched. It's not determined by the authority. In the past, if I was a very renowned videographer, I made a video, and then people would see that differently because I'm a professional trained renowned videographer. But today, it depends upon the attention of the viewers. If people view it, your video becomes popular. Look at the social networking sites, Facebook, for example. In the past, we did have, communication between certain individuals, certain groups. But today, these technologies, these tools enable us to have communication in all directions. How do we make sense of all these things? In this family of development, there is one silent movement going on. That is what we call open mapping or OpenStreetMap. So meaning every individual is now capable of observing, measuring, mapping, and sharing their local observation with other people in the world. That's remarkable development. Each of us can be mapper. Citizens are mapper. Some people say citizens are sensors. They do have eyes, they do have ears, 5 basic senses. They're using that. They're constantly sensing the surface of the earth, observing, collecting information, and sharing. That's possible, and that is happening. This conference is about this new phenomenon. So over the next, today and tomorrow, we will be discussing about these questions. or at least the original question has come to the reality to some extent, but there is much more that we need to do together. So we do have amazing people from over 20 countries in this room, and we'll be sharing our ideas, our experience, our learnings, and trying to sketch the future of this movement in Asia and beyond. We do have 15 country presentations, meaning 15 countries are going to talk about what is happening in their country about OpenStreetMap. What is the status? And that will be tremendous learning for all of us. We do have government panel. And we also do have young mappers panel. This conference is a little different. We have people from government. There is a panel. But we also do have, people from high school, for example. There is a session. So because we want to create that atmosphere. The senior people from government can learn from young people can learn from the government officials, university faculty can learn from others. So that's the way we design these countries. By the way, this map shows the countries. They are going to talk about the status of OpenStreetMap. So we do have a country presentation today after the opening ceremony, and then tomorrow also. So thank you everybody for coming. You have travel, and I know some of you just landed last night. You didn't have good sleep. I also thank you, the government officials. We do have our Honorable Vice Chairman of the National Planning Commission, Dr. Swarnim Mogli. He called me this morning. He said, "Nama, I'm sick, and I want to come, but I said, please try." And I'm so happy that you came exactly in time. And I don't want to talk more about him. Gaurav will be introducing him in a minute. We do have former Minister for Education, Dr. Gangalal Tuladhar. Honorable Tuladhar coordinates a member of Parliament in disaster-related issues. Thank you for coming, your time, your interest to this. And I actually have opened a new conversation with him over the last couple of weeks. I'm trying to educate him more about this phenomenon. I've told him that you need to understand this. You have to take this message to the Parliament and open a discussion within the Parliament because it brings lots of potential for us, for our society. We do have an incredible mix of keynote speakers. Keith Chapman, who is the president of the OSM Foundation, couldn't make in person, so he will be speaking remotely. We do have Lee Schwartz. Thank you for traveling all the way from Washington, D.C. to give a keynote speech. Thank you for accepting our request. We do have Professor Taishi. I can't see Taishi, by the way. He must be somewhere here. So, thank you. So, thank you all. So, I would, before I leave, I just want to share a quote by Einstein. He said, imagination is more important than knowledge. Paul encouraged us to collect knowledge and make it available to the society, very important. But Einstein goes a step further and says, knowledge is good, but what we need more is imagination, action. So now today with those technology, we can collect information, data, knowledge from citizens, from different groups. But what we need now is imagination. How will we use that knowledge, information, for what purpose, for whose benefit? These are the kinds of questions I hope we'll be having discussion today and tomorrow. Thank you everybody for coming. Thank you so much. I hope we'll have a great conference. Thank you.
So thank you for those wonderful remarks and a brief idea about what the conference is going to be all about. So next, as Dr. Noma mentioned, we have Kate Chapman, the chairman of OSM Foundation. But before that, I just wanted to make clear that we do have a YouTube link, because you mentioned YouTube in your speech. We do have a YouTube link, and so if you want to share that with anybody, then if I remember, you can just show that link real quick so that people can have a look. And I've also emailed it to all the country presenters so that your sessions, if you want your friends and family to see, then you can send them that link and share it with them. So that's the link. So Kate, as Norma mentioned, is going to be joining us remotely via Skype. Kate Chapman has worked at the intersection of technology and nonprofits for the past 9 years. She has served as a founder and first executive director of the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team, the chief technology officer of the Cadasta Foundation, and has also held board positions at multiple other nonprofits, working to help marginalized populations with open source software. Kate very strongly believes in the mantra, people before data, which has been core to her work over the past decade. So with that, I would like to bring Kate on board and let her run the show from there.
Okay, hello everyone. Sorry I couldn't join you today. Maybe we should start building a free teleporter of the entire world. So I'm gonna talk about the growth of OpenStreetMap. And I always get excited when I talk to audiences such as yours because it's people who already generally get it. A lot of times I spend time trying to convince people that OpenStreetMap is important. I like to, no matter who I'm talking to, remind them of what we're really trying to do. And the reason for that is I think this is such an audacious goal to create a free map of the entire world that it is worth mentioning. Because so many times when you say this, people say, of course, isn't the world already mapped? And of course, we all know that it's not. The other thing that I think is important and why I'm a little sad, why I'm certainly sad not to join you today, is remembering that OpenStreetMap is not just about the data. It's definitely more about the community. I also like to mention sort of what I view as the intersection of the data and the community. And for me, one of those examples is map cakes. Because the idea that the data is so open that you can print it on a map, you can print the map on a cake and eat it, and you haven't broken any license. And what I think is fascinating is from that idea, all of the OpenStreetMap cakes that have been made over the years. And I've seen these cakes from the smallest meetups to in the offices of the World Bank. They really have happened all over. The other thing that often comes up, is what about the quality? And what excites me about what's going on with OpenStreetMap now is that it's becoming less and less of a question. As some of the largest companies in the world are using OpenStreetMap and the largest NGOs, we've shown that the quality is good. So I just wanted to review a little bit of the 13 years of growth in OpenStreetMap. Maybe it's just an excuse to show the amazing the amazing quantity of registered users. We're well over 3 million now. And the growth of the OpenStreetMap contributors per month as well. And so that, returning back to that quality, it really starts to make sense that there's more and more people contributing. And sorry, I've thrown in an extra graph. Oh, sorry, that was new contributors per month. So more and more people are continuing to sign up, but also keep becoming a greater and greater amount. So I'm speaking as part of the OpenStreetMap Foundation, and I find that a lot of people involved in OpenStreetMap don't really know that much about the foundation. So I wanted to mention a little bit about has it. So we talk about this amazing community of mappers, but there needs to be a legal entity to support it. So the OSM Act was created to support the OpenStreetMap project and community as a legal entity. We manage the license and own the infrastructure on which OpenStreetMap runs. And I wanted to put a plea out to join the foundation. So for £15 a year, you can become a member of the foundation. And we're going to be shortly mentioning a membership drive. And why should you join? Well, you're at a conference 100% about OpenStreetMap. Why wouldn't you join the legal foundation behind it? It allows you to help shape the future of the project. You can vote for board members, such as myself. And so early next week, you should hear about the launch of a membership drive. We're trying to get more people to be members. There's always been many more members than foundation members. And really, it doesn't need to be that way. And for those of you that are concerned,
sorry, I think the internet got cut. Arati, could you check the internet, and then let's see if we can bring Kate back. While we're fixing that, Kate talked about OSM Foundation and the membership drive for that. And so we'll also send a link about that information to everyone. And we'll also be sharing all the slides after this session. I'll be emailing it to all the participants who've registered and given their email addresses to us. So those will be made available. So Kate, can you hear us?
yes, I can.
Okay, please continue.
I think it's important to be clear that OpenStreetMap and your involvement can be what you want it to make it. In 2009, I simply started mapping my neighborhood. I would go on walks and I would take a GPS unit and I would map the trails around my house. The main reason I had started to do that is my neighborhood was next to another one and we had very similar resources in terms of walking trails and playgrounds and other facilities. And my neighborhood let anyone use them. The neighborhood next door was far wealthier and you had to be a resident. So I started secretly mapping their area as well, just to show that things were very similar. And I felt that really we could share rather than their situation where they had put up security cameras to stop people from using their equipment and walking trails. So I was just an OpenStreetMap surveyor, like many of you. And then the often told story about the earthquake in Haiti, simply after the earthquake in Haiti and the OpenStreetMap community started spontaneously mapping, I was one of those people who spontaneously started mapping. But then I started going to Haiti. And from there, the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team became a reality. This is one of our first in-person meetings when State of the Map was in Denver. And all those humanitarian uses, continue to expand. You see it more and more within, I think the newest one is really among all the use for refugees. So it's gone beyond disaster response and preparedness. And so then that took me to Indonesia. And really at that point, OpenStreetMap became my entire life for a while, and looking to see how we could build an OpenStreetMap community there. I believe at least one of my colleagues is in the audience today as well. There we were trying to, it was a relatively new use of OpenStreetMap. We were trying to take these community drawn maps and make them geospatial. By using OpenStreetMap, could it be faster to update maps? And from there is sort of where you see me today in OpenStreetMap, primarily serving as the chairperson of the OpenStreetMap Foundation, and then just sort of a regular mapper as well. So we've seen all this amazing growth, but there certainly were challenges and continue to be. The mapping schema being primarily focused on the UK has been difficult in some places. Our contributors tend to be very similar, but I think that's changing. There's certainly language and cultural barriers. To get involved in the foundation, you really have to speak English at this point, as far as participating in working groups and things like that. And of course, the tools tended to be highly technical. Though this has been greatly improved. I was delighted last night. My husband and I rent a room on Airbnb sometimes, and we ended up having a guest last night. I was delighted that she was using maps.me because she was from the UK and didn't want to have a data plan in the US. And so she was using OpenStreetMap to navigate and didn't even know about it. And be able to say with pride, I helped make that map that allowed you to get here. So I think tools like that are definitely changing things as far as that goes. I talked about cakes. Something that really excites me is just the unexpected uses. Sometimes when you're on an airplane, if there's the map showing your destination, it's OpenStreetMap. I don't have any OpenStreetMap clothing, but I'm certainly jealous of people who do. I just get excited about how many different ways can we use it, and will someone come up with a new way, a State of the Map Asia this weekend? Who knows? So one of the biggest changes in recent years, though, has been the increase in organizational involvement. I mentioned a little bit about it before, but how great is it that some of the largest companies and international NGOs use OpenStreetMap now? For many reasons, but simply the costs. When Google Maps started charging for their API, it became more effective. The quality has really gotten there. That they can update it if there's a mistake, and the frequency of updates. So something that I've been thinking a lot about, and there's always talk within the community, is how are these organizations different? I think one of the fears and one of the benefits, depending on your perspective, is that many resources, editors and coders, can be put behind an initiative. That often they want a globally complete map versus individuals might just care about a region or county. Or if you think back to when I was mapping my neighborhood, I really just cared about my neighborhood. Items such as turn restrictions and addresses have become more important this way. And those corporations have different types of accountability. They have shareholders and employees. They report differently. In addition to the organizations, how does OpenStreetMap differ from the other geographic crowdsourcing? I think, we've won. We just have more contributors. There's more organizations. And OpenStreetMap continues to be behind many of the maps you use online. So I don't think anyone completely knows what the future of OpenStreetMap brings, but this is what I'm hoping for. I really hope that the community will continue to diversify. I'd love to see that there's many more women involved in OpenStreetMap. There could still be more of us, but I think back to the times where I felt like one of the only woman or one of two or three in any situation. I think we're going to see greater use of greater growth of quality assurance tools. There's a lot of separate tools right now, and but I think we'll coalesce more around just a few. And there's official ways to become a local chapter of the OpenStreetMap Foundation. I think it would be wonderful for Nepal to apply to join and officially have a relationship with the OpenStreetMap Foundation. Other broader things that I think about is, how do autonomous vehicles fit into OpenStreetMap? I think at their base, they still need a map. The other hot topic, I think, is machine learning. As companies and some individuals, but to a lesser extent, just due to access to imagery, do more machine learning. How does that relate to imports? If you can detect the majority of the roads in the country, how does that relate to people who are mapping those roads by hand? What's the best way to interact between robots in the community? So I'm really excited about all of those things, and I think OpenStreetMap continues to have a bright future. And I hope that everyone has a wonderful time at State of the Map Asia over the weekend. And I'm sorry I'm not there to have those hallway conversations and to get to know everyone better. If you want to talk about anything I've gone over today, or just want to say hi, feel free to email me at kate@osmffoundation.org. I always love to chat with people that are excited about OpenStreetMap. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. And I think Aragya shared the YouTube link with you, so you can follow us throughout this whole weekend. And so thank you for that. And Kate.
Okay, thank you very much.
So Kate mentioned about diversification and having a large group of people that we have here. Is a very diverse crowd. We've got OSM experts, we've got OSM novices. So just before the next speaker, I would just like to show you a small video of how people start mapping, and then I'll call upon the next speaker.
In 2010, after an earthquake in Haiti, online volunteers became part of a movement that is creating a free and open digital map of the world.
In an emergency, you just need data from wherever you are.
It's important that the information is open and available to everyone, because some situations we don't know it's going to happen. It's a surprise.
What is remote mapping?
Remote mapping is sort of an interesting new phenomenon that's happened probably since about 2010 in Haiti. We saw a real push of volunteers coming online to help create map data where none existed before.
Map data helps humanitarian efforts, not just in a crisis. It helps communities like Kibera in Nairobi, Kenya, prepare, develop, and respond to needs at the local level. It's a big job, and not every place is mapped like we may believe.
Developing or establishing data is a very huge step in kicking off the process of changing things. And that's the point at which the maps become very useful.
When the typhoon happened, we realized that there were no good maps of the Philippines, that there needed to be maps so that our personnel would know where to go and what they would find when they got there. So we partnered with the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team to help them and help us build out a base map for the Philippines.
Think of OpenStreetMap as Wikipedia for maps.
OpenStreetMap is a free and open map of the entire world. It's primarily edited by volunteers. We create everything in the commons. It's completely open, available for anyone to contribute to and anyone to use.
How do volunteers help?
The way that a volunteer can help is by looking at satellite imagery and picking out different predefined objects and saying, okay, I see a house, I can trace the edges of that house. I see a road, I can trace the line of that road. I see an edge of a forest, I can trace the edge of that forest.
MapGive is making it easier for new online volunteers to take those first steps in helping build an open, free map of the world and become digital humanitarians. Learn how to map in 3 steps. Get an OpenStreetMap account, practice mapping, then get connected with a task on the MapGive site. You'll get the skills to map. What you'll give helps communities around the world.
The value of the geographic data created in OpenStreetMap for humanitarian response has already been compelling. The amount of information that's been produced and the utility it has rendered to the humanitarian community is a game changer in humanitarian response.
For the typhoon response, we've had, I think, almost 1,600 volunteers do something like 4.5 million edits to the base map just for the Philippines. And those 1,600 volunteers represent some 3 to 4 years of dedicated mapping that one person would be able to do.
We're asking the question, what if there were more online map givers?
What can happen if we had 10 times the amount of volunteers, 50 times the amount of volunteers? How many areas could we map? How much good could we do in this process?
Let's find out how much good we can do. MapGive today.
So the next keynote speaker we have is the geographer of the United States, Dr. Lee Schwartz. And that video was a product of his office. And his office is known for its excellence in cartography and its worldwide prominence in boundary analysis. He himself has spent a long time, his career working on crisis response, both in the field and at the headquarters. He maintains strong ties with academia, lecturing, and teaching courses as an adjunct professor at several universities in Washington, D.C. area and elsewhere, as well as staying closely tied to professional societies that focus on geography. And he's won many awards over his long career, but the one that I want to mention right now, and probably is most interesting to note, is the Cullum Medal, highest honor of distinction given by the American Geographic Society. And the interesting thing about this award is it was first given out in 1896 to Robert Peary, the first man to travel to the North Pole. It has also been given to several other explorers, such as Neil Armstrong, the first person to land on the moon, and the brave people of the Everest expedition team, the first team in 1953 to summit Mount Everest. So, saying that, I would like to ask Dr. Lee Schwartz to come up on stage and give his keynote address.
Thank you very much, Gaurav, for those kind words. I feel very small when you mention me in that company. And I also want to thank Kate Chapman for her leadership over the years and her dedication. And I'm sorry that Kate couldn't be here to join us today. I'd like to start my comments today by extending my thanks to our hosts here in Kathmandu, and in particular to Kathmandu Living Labs for inviting me to speak at this very first State of the Map Asia conference. And also to congratulate KLL's Nama Buzutoki, and the network of open mappers that Nama has energized to make critical contributions to growing the digital map of Nepal at a time when it needed it the most. I was asked if I could address in my comments today how and why open mapping got its start within the US government, specifically within the Department of State where I work, to discuss some of the mapping projects my office has worked on, and also where I see the future of open mapping heading. My official position as the geography of the U.S. Department of State is rather unique since there are not many other governments that have a geographer attached to its foreign ministry in an official capacity to provide guidance to policymakers on geographic matters and international affairs, in particular those related to mapping policies and conventions. I should clarify first and foremost, I have no responsibilities for United States government data, geospatial information. My realm is purely international. But I'm working on many global mapping efforts. I do work closely with a number of other United States government agencies to help define best practices for geospatial information and open data protocols in the realm of international data. I work particularly closely with the State Department's sister agency, the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, but also with the Interior Department, with agencies like the Census Bureau and the U.S. Geological Survey, the National Geospatial Agency, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, NASA, and many others. My office also works very closely with the United Nations, most recently its Global Geographic Information Management Initiative that promotes the importance of national spatial data infrastructures, or NSDIs, that should be consistently adhered to by all governments. This effort has received a boost recently by the launching of the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, a number of which explicitly call for the application of standardized geospatial data. I want to get to some slides. I'm starting slowly and then building to a frenetic pace pretty soon, so hold on to your seats. So first and foremost, my passion is for maps. And at the end of the day, that is a large part about what my work is about. That is producing maps for policymakers in support of their decision-making processes. I cannot help myself from showcasing at least some of the work done every day by our very talented team of analysts and cartographers. Perhaps I can. There we go. Because usually when I'm presenting, I have maps behind me and I speak about the maps we produce. I'm not going to do that specifically today, but I think it's worthwhile to just see the broad variety of issues that our office covers, where we engage on a whole series of important mapping, data, and policy issues. So I'm bringing you through a very quick tour of some of the types of maps that are produced by the office on a regular basis. As you can see from these examples, my office works across a wide range of issues, but where we engage most with the open mapping community is on natural disaster preparation, mitigation, and response, on health monitoring and disease prevention, on stability promotion, in particular governance, elections, and disrupting illicit criminal networks, and on sustainable development, most notably in urban areas as the world becomes increasingly urbanized. Collectively, I refer to this suite of issues that our office works on as human security issues, or as I like to promote it, working on human geography, to understand people as well as places. I'll mention only briefly later in my comments about the Secondary Cities Open Mapping Initiative that my office oversees and the project we have implemented here in Pokhara, Nepal in partnership with Kathmandu Liberty Labs. There will be a session devoted entirely to secondary cities tomorrow afternoon, and I invite you all to attend that. We also engage frequently with the open mapping community on boundaries, which is where my only real authority as a U.S. geographer lies. The U.S. geographer is responsible for how boundaries and names are produced on all official United States government maps. And once we made our boundary shapefiles open and available to anyone who wants them, we actually started getting a lot of feedback from people online who would tell us that boundaries were wrong in certain areas. They would take snapshot of border markers or features. So we have improved our own ability to define international boundaries by allowing them to be open and getting feedback from people who are actually in the field at the boundaries, who have good knowledge of where these places should be. So there's great value in making the boundary information openly available. So in my position at the Department of State, I've learned that good mapping and supportive decision-making these days requires three very straightforward factors at a minimum. First of all, good data. Second of all, effective visualization. Very frequently when we try to brief maps to our senior policymakers, if there's too much information on the map, they won't be effective. By the same token, if you have to go through too many clicks in a map, they won't be effective. So we have to try to figure out how to make best use of the data in a very brief, usually one-shot image. And the third, I think, basic factor is transferability of the map data, or interoperability. They need to be shared. I would like to issue a reminder to the OpenStreetMap community that maps did exist before GIS and open mapping, all right? But what is most valuable about OSM and geographic information systems is the power of the data that lie behind the digital maps that are being generated by virtual armies of volunteers. So we need not to rush into thinking that locations are not mapped at all just because there are no digital signatures. Most of the world is indeed mapped in one way or another. I was told by a colleague of mine once that there is no such thing as a data poor area, just areas where we may not know how or where to get the data. So the true value of open map data is that facts on the ground can be located, identified, edited, stored, and made available in a digital format that in the end promotes the democratization of data, information, and knowledge, and empowers both governments and its citizens. The World Bank's Open Data for Resilience initiative recognized that, and I quote, "To build resilient societies, policymakers and the public must have access to the right data and information to make good decisions. Sharing data and creating open systems promotes transparency, accountability, and ensures a wide range of actors can participate in the challenge of building resilience." And in fact, I noted just a couple of days ago a newspaper article from the Himalaya News Service that referenced a program earlier this week in Kathmandu titled "Rebuilding Safer Urban Spaces." This meeting called for the proper enforcement of the 2016 Nepali bylaws on settlement development, urban development, and building construction, noting that its success will depend on the conviction of citizens that these rules are for their own benefit and the capacity of local governments in strictly implementing these regulations. So in order to achieve these visions, what is needed are not just better maps, but map data that are current, accessible, shareable, accurate, trusted, and valued. I often say that the map data need to be useful, usable, and at the end of the day, used. If nobody uses them, the data may be outstanding, but they lose their value. But I want to go back now to my use of the word partnership earlier, because in my experience, building good open map data is founded on trust in like-minded mappers, whether they be institutional partners or total strangers. So in my office about 10 years ago, right when open mapping was getting its launch, was first starting, we created a separate division called the Humanitarian Information Unit. And the Humanitarian Information Unit is based on partnerships with outside organizations, academic organizations, international organizations, NGOs, universities, US government organizations, and it's founded on transparency and openness in the way that we organize our information. Virtually every project my office takes on via its Humanitarian Information Unit leverages partnerships of trust we have developed over the years more than it does funding from a wealthy donor government. We work, for example, with NGOs in the field, the World Bank, Red Cross, and USAID in Washington, D.C., and a critical piece of the triad, I like to say, universities around the world. I refer to universities as islands of stability because governments may change, NGOs may come and go, but universities remain a place where knowledge can be maintained, increased, and shared. Our office also co-sponsors mapathons. We make an effective use of an increasing cadre of virtual foreign service interns. We explore scientific aspects of open mapping technologies with organizations like the National Science Foundation and the National Academies of Sciences. And we've entered into partnerships with the National Geographic Society and professional geography associations like the Association of American Geographers and the American Geographical Society. And we get tremendous value from visiting scientists on fellowships like the American Association for the Advancement of Science and the Jefferson Science Fellows. In fact, one of our recent Jefferson Science Fellows, Dr. Melinda Latourie, is with us today, and she is the principal investigator of our Secondary Cities project, and she is here today to work on expanding on that project into a variety of cities throughout the region. Another one of our Jefferson Science Fellows, Dr. Dick Marston, a former president of the American Association of Geographers, is actually one of the world's leading geomorphologists with a specialty on mountain and water resource geography, and has done a great deal of his research over the years right here in Nepal. And yet another Jefferson Science Fellow who took up residence in my office was a former president of the American Geographical Society, and he was the one who first introduced me to rigorous participatory GIS with his Bowman expeditions, named after perhaps the most famous American geographer, and the only geographer ever to be named geographer to the president, Isaiah Bowman. This was about the process that I think everybody understands now, but back then was first being implemented, where it was more about open data and open mapping, and it came about at the same time as our previous administration in the United States institute an opendata.gov website and helped to launch the Intergovernmental Open Government Partnership, cementing a commitment to open data as a bipartisan U.S. government policy. So my office, anticipating the increase in the value of using imagery after the Haiti earthquake, which is a seminal moment in the world of open mapping, developed an initiative in 2010 that we called Imagery to the Crowd, where we made use of high-resolution satellite imagery that the U.S. could provide. We worked with the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team on its tasking manager so that we could have our volunteer mappers develop this process with HOT. And I have a timeline here that shows the top, which is where the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team was working on its development. At the same time, the U.S. government, in my office, was working on our development of a process where we could provide free of charge under a license that the U.S. government holds, process high-resolution current satellite imagery to a group of volunteer mappers. The project our office has instantiated as the MapGive project that was shown in the video earlier today, and we've done a number of work with mapathons around the world, including here in Kathmandu, with KLL, with the hurricane, with the typhoon in the Philippines. It's a lot easier to prepare for open data mapping if you have a typhoon rather than natural disaster. You can do both before and after imagery. You've seen that slide already. And our MapGive project now has been utilized well over 200 times. We participate in Open Geography Awareness Week. We run mapathons. We've had them at the White House. I will not talk about the Secondary Cities project because Linda Latourie will talk about this tomorrow. We have a very successful project in Pokhara. And of course, we joined with literally hundreds of thousands of volunteers around the world to help respond to the earthquake here in April of 2015, where you can see in just 3 days how much data were added just in Kathmandu Valley outskirts via the imagery that was provided through Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team tasking manager. These are the type of maps our office traditionally puts out, but I like to say that this community shouldn't pat itself on the back too much for saying that what they do in natural disaster response saves lives. But in this case, in the Nepal earthquake, indeed, we got information from mappers in the field that, and others, volunteers, that there were trekkers that were trapped. We provided high-resolution satellite imagery in the exact areas, and it helped first-time responders to save them. I just said people shouldn't be patting themselves on the back. I'm patting myself on the back right now. And the explosion in imagery, the explosion in volunteers has led to the explosion for really being very careful in how we manage the tasks that are required in terms of knowing what scale we need, what exactly we're looking for. And this is my last slide. I believe I've just hit my 15-minute mark, but if you can allow me 1 minute to go through my summary of how we best get and use good open map data. Has to be from the ground up, but it also has to be partnered with top-down imagery. All right, we have to, as I just said, know the appropriate scale. I'm agnostic as to whether it's open data or free data or authoritative data. It has to be good data. That's what I'm most concerned with. A lot of times we get concerned with filling holes in a map, and in doing so we rush and we get bad data into those holes. So how do we get good data? I've already said the useful, usable, and used. Sorry. Partnerships are important, whether they be open and voluntary, participatory GIS, or based on a community. And we need to work with the triad always of local government, NGOs, and universities as islands of stability. Innovation is increasingly from volunteer technical community in the private sector. Governments are no longer leading the charge in mapping like many governments did a decade ago. So we need ways also to provide quality assurance and quality control and tools to automate this, to verify, and at the end of the day to analyze this information. We know we need to do a better job of communicating our results in clear language to policymakers and decision makers. And most importantly, we need to incentivize volunteerism. After a natural disaster, lots of people volunteer, but then this community tends to move like amoebas to the next disaster. How do we keep that information current? We need to find champions. My office uses satellite imagery as an incentive, but most importantly, we need to incentivize the next generation of open mappers, which is why I wore my Youth Mappers t-shirt today. Not exactly Superman, but if we can galvanize the next generation, then we'll at least have super maps. So I'll put my cape on now and I'll leave. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. D. Schwartz, the geographer of the United States, coming here and presenting. That's fantastic. Just before I invite our next keynote speaker, I just wanted to show something. Right at the end of the slides, Dr. Lee Schwartz mentioned that open mappers are here. Open mappers are here and everywhere. And this is live right now in OpenStreetMap. People are mapping from all around the world, and you can see exactly where they're mapping, what they're mapping, and who is mapping. So just wanted to share this imagery with everyone. And next, what we have is our final keynote speaker, Professor Taichi Furuhashi, who's similarly passionate about mapping and connecting local communities with maps and sharing knowledge to empower people. During the huge earthquake and tsunamis that destroyed cities and local communities in East Japan area in 2011, he was an avid supporter of OpenStreetMap and mapping. And he's going to share how they are trying to make a more resilient society with mapping, panorama, VR, and drone technology. So Professor Taichi from Aomagun University and President of Crisis Mappers in Japan. Please come share your.
Namaste. Thank you for introducing about me. And yes, check. So, my name is Taichi. I come from Japan, and today I will share about Japanese mappers history. Very few years, short years. And I remember in 2015 in Jakarta. So SOTM Asia was born in Indonesia. So that is a kick-off SOTM Asia Conference. we organized. And the first SOTM Asia conference organized by many Asian mappers. And this is a photo in Asia, like this. Taiwan, Nepal, and Bangladesh or something. Yes. And so first, I want to share about the third story. So because this person is very important, because he connect to the SOTM conference, SOTM Asia conference with Japanese government side. Japanese government provided some budget for the startup of SOTM Asia. His name is Shikita-san. But so suddenly in this month, he had gone. So I have to say, so thank you, many thank you, Sekita-san. So, and I have to share about Japanese mappers situation now. Okay. So today I have to share about many crisis mapping in Japan. So already many people know 2015 Nepal's earthquake, 2010 Haiti's earthquake. Not many natural disasters happen. So my main work is about the teacher. So every day I have to teach about how to make good map data for students. And actually, I bring 4 students from university, 2 universities in this time. And also, I'm working with open community, geospatial community. I'm president of Crisis Mapper Japan, that is an NPO, and also just director of Open Street Map Foundation Japan, and Open Geospatial OSGeo Japan, that is another geospatial tools community. So many times I work with Open Geospatial community. And 2010 Haiti, so big earthquake happened. So and made that movie very major. And this is my first experience of crisis mapping. And hot President Michael Mellon said, Haiti's 2010, that situation means that is the end of phase 0 of hot activity and crisis mapping activity. So I agree. Before Haiti's earthquake and after Haiti's earthquake, that situation is different. And so I can compare. So in Japan, already, 2011, next year, so Japan has very big earthquake and tsunami like this. So that is very serious situation. And immediately we did a crisis mapping activity in the east of Japan like this. And so a lot of mappers tried crisis mapping in Japan. So that means in Japan, so in 2011 is the end of phase 0 in Japan. So another year, many natural disaster serious situation happened. So example, 2013, a big landslide happened in Tokyo area. Tokyo has some island and like this. So this landslide attacked the local city like this. And so we made a map data like this. And our map data used by local people like the paper map. So local people put our map like this. And also many volunteers came to the Izu Oshima Island, and they get good map data as paper maps. So same year, maybe Philippines has a big typhoon. That name is Yolanda. So already, of course, so we joined the crisis mapping too. And this is a Japanese government side map. So because there are many Japanese people in Philippines, and Japanese government side have to make damaged map in Japanese map data, paper map. So they made like this map based on OpenStreetMap. And 2015, April, so when I was working in Tokyo University, so Aoyama Gakuin University said, you have to move to this university. I moved in 2015, April. Maybe you can guess. This month, Nepal's earthquake happened. So that is very serious situation, I understand. So immediately I said to my student, hey, if you have time, you have to join the crisis mapping for Nepal. So, and our students joined the crisis mapping for Nepal like this. And Hot Blog has some information about Japanese student activity. So, yeah, last year, 2016, Kumamoto earthquake happened. Kumamoto is south of Japan. And so in that project, tasking manager can explain about the building mapping. And so our student joined to Kumamoto's situation. So our university has a lot of students. Many classes join to crisis mapping. And if some big earthquake or natural disaster happen, so our students join. Over 100 students can collaborate with crisis mapping, and usually we can collaborate with missing maps project. So this is the Kumamoto situation before earthquake and after earthquake. We added a lot of building data, and big landslide happened, and that landslide destroyed big bridge, and we are making many student profile and portfolio used by the hot tasking manager. So this is an example about my student. Many tasking manager. So our student joined. And in this year, so Kyushu Island has a big heavy rain situation. And of course, so many times big landslide happen, and sometimes flood area happen, and we made map data like this. So this is our phase 0, no, phase 1. So we can collaborate with crisis mapping activity, and we are thinking about next phase, phase 2. We are thinking we should get more useful data used by drone. So I can show that drone movie. Please change to my movie. Sorry, in Japanese, but maybe you can understand. 思い出してほしい。大好きな映画の作戦会議。Yes, really. So this is a Takuroban in Philippines, 2030. So if big natural disaster happen, immediately we should share the reason. そこにはいつも頼れる地図が。Yes. We should share the recent situation from the air, so we can get all drone. So if we can bring and we can fly all drone on the air, so that means we can share the area image for crisis mapping. Our project name is Drone. So the drone price is changing to the more low price, and in general drone has cabin, and you can fly recent drone. And if you want to make more useful drone, you can make use by 3D printer or other digital fabrication tool. And so when we fly the drone on the air, we can get a lot of aerial photo, and we can communicate, and we can share those data to mappers. So drones imagery is very useful for mappers activity. And we are working in the university. We can connect for the educational places for how to control the drone, how to take a lot of aerial photo used by drone, how to make mapping data. So we call drone map base. And this is an example. In Japan has many, so in Tokyo area, we have a lot of island, volcano island. So if volcano erupt, so local people, if they want, they have own drone, they can get a lot of air and moving like this. This is another situation of drone in Japan. So after that, we can calculate some also rectified imagery, and we can share on the open area and other geospatial data sharing platform. So this is making also rectified imagery. And after that, we can share the tile map for the web map. And after that, so we can share those OpenStreetMap data on your smartphone, or old people want to get a paper map like this. Okay, we have no time, so please stop. Yes, maybe you can understand. Yes, please back to my slide. Yes, this is a drones activity. And this is our plan. And already we had agreement with local government, over 8 local governments in Japan. If our mapper has own drone, they can fly around 500 meters or about 1 kilometer used by own drone. And also we can add fixed wing type of drone. That drone has good opportunity, and that drone can get a lot of aerial photo. And if we get aerial photo, we can share those data via open aerial map to OpenStreetMap. And we can share on the GitHub too. And after that, so the OpenStreetMap data move to the activities of the evacuation, affected areas people. And this is a disaster drill with local government in Japan. So many times we collaborate with local government with drone and map data. And this is collaborate with Tokyo Prefecture. And officially, we and firefighters will collaborate now. And next one, we are using bicycle for the street level imagery. You know, I'm taking material T-shirt now. And so if we add panorama photo on your bicycle, we can detect 360 degrees panorama photo like this. And also we can add radiation sensor, because you know, in 2011, Fukushima Daiichi, a nuclear plant destroyed by tsunami. And we are thinking, that situation, what happened about radiation? We have Safe Gas project, and we can make DIY Geiger count, and we can put on bicycle, and we can share the radiation map data like this, based on OpenStreetMap data. And last information, so how to connect to internet in disaster affected area. So, you know, tsunami attacked a lot of infrastructure. Sometimes we cannot connect to internet. So we made new car like this. On top side, we add satellite antenna, and we can connect to the internet via this car. So, and our activity can connect to domestic community in Red Cross Japan team and MSX Japan team. So, and actually, in this year, we are collaborating. Project is starting now. So, we are making a lot of documents in Japanese for non-mappers community, like this. Collaborate with Japanese Red Cross team. That's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Daichi. And thank you to our 3 wonderful keynote speakers. It has been illuminating knowing how academia, government, and the foundation has helped OSM grow in Asia. Now, moving ahead, we have our distinguished speakers who will talk about open data and open mapping movement and how it has grown in Nepal. First, in the program, we did have Honorable Gagan Thapa, but unfortunately, we just received text messages saying that, he says, "Dai, my apology, I wish I had been able to join." He has another emergency meeting, so he had to attend that meeting. So our first distinguished speaker, I would like to invite Honorable Dr. Gangalal Tulada. He's currently a member of the Legislature Parliament of Nepal and previously served as Minister of Education, Science and Technology, Local Development, and Federal Affairs. He's a Politburo member of the main opposition party of Nepal, UML. Dr. Tulada's research interest centers around disaster risk management, evidence synthesis, policy, and politics. He's a longtime advocate of science and technology-based development and reduction in climate change. Within the parliament, he's the coordinator amongst parliamentarians in disaster risk management group issues. So I would like to invite Honorable Dr. Gangalal Tulada to come with his speech.
Good morning, everybody. Honorable Vice Chairperson of National Planning Commission of Nepal, Dr. Swarnim Mogle, three respected keynote speakers, and distinguished open state mappers of Asia, especially from Asia and from around the globe. I am very much delighted to be here with you all. It is my wonderful participation to the community of this type of community this morning, but I'm from the different one. The politician, the community of politicians, the member of parliament. I always do believe in the science and technology-based decision making. So in the Parliament of Nepal, I am advocating science and technology-based evidence for the better policy making. I think this conference will give the special and very important recommendation for the Nepalese parliamentarians to make the better decision. Once I met with my best friend, Dr. Noah Budasaki, and he invited me to come to this special program. And definitely from the three wonderful keynote speakers, I realized that it is a special one. Thank you, Namaji. Parliamentarians are uniquely positioned to promote and strengthen governance for disaster risk reduction through four distinct roles. Parliamentarians, as political leaders and powerful policy monitors, can influence national development policies and their implementation through their budget allocation and oversight function, to pressure for the institutionalization of the guiding principle of the risk prevention and reduction, and for building resilience into development. Parliamentarians as legislatures have unique power to introduce new legislation or amend existing legislation as necessary, creating a critical legal obligation for risk-sensitive development planning and programs. Parliamentarians are high-level lobbyists who can even influence heads of state and heads of government to increase political commitment to systematically incorporate risk reduction into all development sectors with adequate resources. Parliamentarians are also campaigners by nature with adequate information and knowledge. They can provide better advocacy and advice. They can tap into active expert networks to boost knowledge on disaster risk reduction, DRR, and development. So, for our better performances, we always need better information. I do believe in science and technology. I have already explained about it, best evidence for better policy making. Today, the state of the map of Asia 2017 conference and your respected representatives from different countries of Asia will give important recommendations which can make us powerful. According to my friend Buddha, navigation in Kathmandu was already a nightmare. We don't have a very good address system. If we get an invitation to a dinner, to reach that house, we have to make 6 or 7 calls to get directions. Crowdsourced mapping now has changed all this. Now maps are being built by citizens. Wikipedia has tried. From volunteer specialists converting satellite images to online maps in their spare time to locals out in their neighborhoods collecting GPS coordinates. This online community led by OpenStreetMap has been collectively mapping with incredible detail cities and countries, many for the first time. At this special moment, I also would like to appreciate very much for the Nepali-based non-profit making technology company focused on open source mapping, which was created by Dr. Nabaraj Budatruki, who received a PhD in crowdsourcing open data and social mobile media at the University of Illinois, focused on open mapping in the context of humanitarian work. It was really a great thing that after the devastating earthquake of 2015 in Nepal, he trained about 1,700 Nepali engineers on mobile data collection technology and deployed to 11 districts, collected 6.6 million photos of 750,000 houses and 3.6 million people just about 90 days. It was really, really a great thing. So I appreciate him very much, and this special gathering of the Open Street Mappers, I finally would like to ask you all here, it is better to work with the parliamentarian of your own country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Tiladar. We certainly hope that we can work with the government closer as we move forward. And I think that's the case with all OpenStreetMappers around the world. And having such a strong proponent in the legislature parliament of Nepal will help us going forward. Finally, our last distinguished speaker, I would like to invite Honorable Dr. Swarnim Wagle, who is the Vice Chairman of the National Planning Commission of Nepal. Dr. Wagle has had a remarkable journey from the rural Himalayas to global seats of learning and professionalism. And I'm pleased to invite Dr. Wagle, who is a strong proponent of open data and open mapping in Nepal and beyond. We know Dr. Wagle is a little unwell today, and we really appreciate that he still has decided to come here and speak a few words. We understand that you're unwell, so it's okay. Please come join us.
the Honorable Member of Parliament, Dr. Bangalal Tuladarju, distinguished keynote speakers, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very pleased to be here, but under adverse conditions, not feeling very well. If I collapse while speaking, take me to the nearest hospital. If I die while speaking, I donate 10% of my wealth to the OpenStreetMap. Well, the distinguished speakers before me have already touched on various themes. For me, I'm a novice. I'm tech savvy, but not as tech savvy as you guys. I think 6 or 7 months before the great earthquake in April 2015, I first met Namazi and was briefed on the work that he was initiating. And immediately, without understanding the technical intricacies of this work, I could see the policy relevance of the work that he had initiated. And I was a member of the Planning Commission then. I thought this is something that must be encouraged. And I was delighted that 6 or 7 months on, the great earthquake hit, and the crisis served as an opportunity to showcase the great humanitarian benefits of this initiative. For me, I think the big 3 themes that I take away as being the enablers for this movement and for this initiative is the spirit of volunteerism, the availability of off-the-shelf technology, and this urge on the part of young people to force larger change through collective action. I think if you get to the core principles of what drives all this and why is this important, I think then everything else falls in place. Nepal, fortunately, is ripe for takeoff, and we are in a position to leapfrog technologically. On the social indicators, we've made fantastic progress on the first generation issues. Political achievements have been remarkable. We are one of the most progressive countries in the world when it comes to the legal and constitutional rights for all the diverse peoples of Nepal. But on the economic agenda, we continue to lag. And I think we should be looking at opportunities to leapfrog in economic terms as well. And this is where I think technology can play a big role. I was looking at official government data from about 1991 when we last had big political change. The number of telephones that existed in the entire country of Nepal was 71,560. Today, Nepalis carry 28 million cell phones. Subscription rate is about 135 per every 100 citizens. Doesn't mean everybody carries a smartphone. Some carry 2 or 3, maybe 5. But nonetheless, it speaks to the amazing, the tantalizing possibilities that we have within our grasp to leverage technological leapfrogging for economic prosperity. We are a young nation. The median age is just 21, 22. Even by the end of 2030, we'll still be under 30. This is not the case for many of the advanced, mature countries. Even India would have crossed the age of 30 by then. China is already way past 30. Japan, much older. Europe, still aging very fast. The only 2 OECD countries which will remain vibrant demography-wise will be Australia and the United States because of their immigration policies. Everybody else is in a crisis in terms of the demographic bonanza. Now, Nepal is not in that situation. We have only after 2028, 2030, we'll start to become an aging society. Only by about 2054, we'll become an aged society. So we wasted a decade or 2, post-conflict transition. We really wasted that period economically, although politically, as I mentioned earlier, we have secured landmark achievements. But that window is still open until 2054. If we can get the next generation of young people excited to be involved in policy making, to be involved in politics, to effect change. So I think Nepal is a diverse country. There are persistent sensitivities about our, what defines us, what unites us, what is our collective identity. And as you know, since the time of Prithviraj Shah, 1769 onwards, when we had a modern nation state, different phases have been defined by different motifs and identity campaigns. I think we're now a progressive, forward-looking, modern, and diverse country. I think we need to look for new symbols, new motives to rally behind. I certainly, as an economist, have a professional bias towards economic prosperity. I think a prosperous Nepal can unite us all, but we all have a stake in the diverse economic activities. But I think the spirit of volunteerism that we saw in the immediate aftermath of the great earthquake can be another rallying cry to really make that leapfrog in Nepal. The second issue is this availability of low-cost technology. This is an amazing way, and we're living in amazing times. You can just download apps, you can just go to URLs. Internet has become very cheap, and there's a lot of work yet to be done, of course, on bridging the digital divide and enhancing and widening access. But the fact that there's such a vibrant community in low-income countries across Asia is an extremely welcome step. And the third, as I mentioned earlier, is this urge on the part of young people to forge larger changes that are larger than themselves for collective action. And we've seen this in the post-earthquake Nepal, the humanitarian coalitions, and all that. But what is important is not to overhype these initiatives. It's extremely important to be humble and modest and realistic. And it would be a pity if young people just see this as fun and do not work as hard to connect it with the substantive policy changes that these technologies can effect. So this is where I was very delighted that the whole slogan of your conference today is from creation to use. And the geographer of the United States was absolutely right to frame it in terms of these initiatives to be useful, usable, and to be used ultimately. And this is what I would urge the Nepali participants here in the room, in the audience, to really try to forge new coalitions, build new alliances, reach out to parliamentarians, reach out to policymakers, and widen. First, education and awareness, why this is important. And the biggest selling point is, of course, it can save lives. But the more mundane use is, of course, it will help you plan better. It will help optimize your resources. And this is where I think Nepal is going through a process of institutional rupture. A state that was unified, unitary, highly centralized for over 220 years is now, devolving very fast, decentralizing. 3 phases of local elections have already happened. With great enthusiasm, we've seen local representatives being elected after a vacuum of almost 20 years. 40% of the local elected officials are women. So this presents a historic opportunity for this community to engage at all tiers of government, at the center, at the provinces, and at the local level. So this is what would be my big plea to you two today, to really envision ways of working with the 753 local units. Doesn't mean that you have to start with a big bang and work at all levels. You can start with a series of pilots. You can identify key elected representatives who understand this stuff and are ready to go, who don't need much convincing. I was with the mayor of Paluntar municipality in Gorkha the other day, a very smart, savvy engineer who would be extremely excited in doing something like this in partnership with this community. So identify such champions across the country, across party lines, across geography, make it representative. I think it would be a fantastic opportunity. And why is this important? I don't think even 100 people know how the recent boundaries were carved of the 743 local units. The boundaries keep changing. The way many of the old districts have been, we had 240 political constituencies, and these have been shrunk to about 165. And I come from a district of Gorkha, which is a neighboring district of the Honorable Member of Parliament. And the way my district has been carved is quite puzzling. And I'm sure there were some objective data that influenced the decision, but most people don't know. And so it's a virgin territory. I think there's an opportunity for you to go there, map what exists, use existing data, There are, government of Nepal is actually very wealthy in terms of data. There's Napi Vibhag, there's CBS, fantastic wealth of information and data. And I've been urging, CBS is under the National Planning Commission, so I've been urging them to really open up and share the data, which is a big cultural shift for them, but they don't have any much choice, so they have to do it. ICIMOD, an intergovernmental agency based here, fantastic GIS mapping on land use, forest cover, a lot of these things. So I think time has come for us to integrate all sorts of data in a neat, usable dashboard, economic indicators, political, social indicators, geographic, natural resource indicators, rivers, valleys, all these things will be extremely important. And where we can have a special slot for volunteers to really contribute. The national statistical organizations are fussy about what they lend legitimacy to. So this is extremely important. They are governed by UNSD, the United Nations Statistical Division. There are standard norms and global covenants and treaties that we are party to that we have to honor. But nonetheless, I think there is always space for people to be more innovative in accommodating the activism of young people. The tracking of development progress of large projects, the national, what we call projects of national pride, I think that will be extremely important. Young people taking pictures, uploading them, forcing accountability would be extremely important. And you really have to widen the campaign for awareness and education, and this is where engaging with local high schools and up to class 12 will be now the responsibility of the local governments. So this is where partnership can yield a lot of low-hanging fruits. Design modules, curriculum, a lot of them have laptops and desktop computers now. So excite them, use the class 11 and 12 kids to go out and map and upload and provide them technologies, start with. So this is something I would expect this community to be energized by and to see tangible results within 3 months, 6 months, within a year. Finally, I think forging alliances, as I alluded to earlier, is extremely important. Ministry of Education, Ministry of Federal Affairs, Ministry of Physical Planning, and all the core development oriented ministries would be extremely important. The basic mantra is follow the money. Whichever ministry or department has a large budget need to be made even more accountable. And this is where I think this kind of digital empowerment. We've talked a lot about political and social empowerment leading to economic empowerment. This agenda is really about digital empowerment leading to economic change. So focus on those. Form creative alliances with other like-minded groups, and I'm delighted there are representatives from more than 15 countries here. And entities like the NPC, National Planning Commission, you obviously have a standing invitation to come and engage, pitch new ideas, anything that is bright, anything that I think is possible within the administrative realms of our government, bureaucracy. I'm keen to promote and foster. If you look at the NPC website, I think you already get a different feel for a typical government agency. It was downgraded a little bit when I was away, but it's back up again with all your fancy data maps and all that. So when you have a few minutes, just go to npc.gov.np and explore an icon called Visualizing Development. There are about 4 things where some of the, I think Namazis and other foundations have contributed, but I am open to having to host on our government website to lend you that legitimacy, stamp of legitimacy, to maybe 100 applications, if I think they will be useful to our policymaking process, or simply to expand the frontiers of knowledge. There are 4 or 5 initiatives that are already underway, and I'm glad. I think Namaji is part of one of them, using the fast reconstruction data, visualizing them, and leveraging them for better policymaking. So this is the core message that I have for you. Finally, the NPC also has something called the National Development Volunteers. And I'm glad that Namaji is part of one of them, using fast reconstruction data, visualizing them, really and leveraging them young people better policymaking. So this is the core message that I have for you. Finally, the NPC also has something called the National Development Volunteers. And I'm glad that Namaji is part of using fast reconstruction data, visualizing them, and leveraging them young people better policymaking. So this is the core message that I have for you. So I wish finally, the NPC also has learning, great cross-fertilization, and I hope you'll get some time to enjoy it. Can get organized. So I wish learned that cross-fertilization, and I hope we'll get some time to enjoy it.
I'd like to say some of those work we've already started here in the past, that we've had close partnerships with mayors from Kolkata, learned that cross-fertilization, and I hope we'll get some time to enjoy it. Young students, 11 and 12, I'd like to say some of those work we've already started here in the past, participating in this conference, partnerships with mayors from Kolkata. I want to just give a round of applause to all the speakers and speakers. I know it was busy time for all of you. So what we're going to do really quickly and be on time, we're going to be on schedule. We have quick photo sessions. I don't think we can fit all 500 of you up here, so just maybe some of the people, whenever you get some of our stage, you can go with our banners. Usually we want the speakers and keynote speakers to come up on stage for photo sessions. So quickly and be on time, because I have schedule. We have quick photo sessions. I don't think we can fit all 500 of you up here, so we'll quickly do some 15 minutes time.
So, can I have everyone's attention? We're going to go ahead with the program schedule. Some newcomers will just slowly gather in. So, this session of ours is a state of the map session. And the state of the map session, as you know, one of the highlights of these state of the map conferences to tell us about what the status of OpenStreetMapping is in that country, and also just mapping in general as well. So we get to see background information about each particular country and how it's going in there. And I think all presenters will also talk a little bit about how OpenStreetMap is being used over there, so the creation of these countries will also forward. So our first speaker and first country presenter is Asansol from Bangladesh. Asansol is working as a remote sensing and GIS and open data consultant in the World Bank Bangladesh. Geospatial technology is his passion, and he's been working with its national and internationally in this field for over 14 years. That's a very long period of time, and he's going to share all that experience with us. He's been involved with open source and open source GIS, and as a GIS geek and supporter of free and open source projects, he realized this huge potential of OSM in developing Bangladesh. Our country, as you all probably know, is regularly affected by natural disasters, particularly floods every year, and it's also a very sensitive region in the world in terms of climate change and how that's affecting countries. We recently had a huge workshop and Mapathon, like Map Bangladesh, and I started something from the company and presented. So basically, we're taking from the podium and talk about Thank you. Good morning, all the distinguished guests and participants here. I'm Arfan. You already told about me. And I have another identity that is Kanan. I'm the Vice President of Indian Education Team. And I was attending the ACC Summit last week in Canada and so nice to meet you all. So let me tell that what's happening in Bangladesh about that. So time is very short. This presentation is given by the last Japan. Because of 45 minutes, within 12 minutes, right? I think we will do everything more minutes. Okay. In Bangladesh, actually, it started in 2012 in one university, Bangladesh University of Engineering Technology, one of the top universities in Bangladesh, government university. And it was a computer science department project. They created one app based on this OpenStreetMap, and after that, the project done. After finishing the project, like all other, many all other projects, that the university is stopped there. After coming here in 2013 in the country, after completing my graduation, and then I started this community again. I started doing a lot of voluntary training in different universities, and then I was opening this community. And now that this Bangladesh community is one of the best communities in the world. And in 2014, then I given a lot of, as I told, I given a lot of training to different organizations, and then government organizations, different universities, and then some part is just like private basis, there is a government project happening on, and we give training to the students, and then do other data, the building community data, and the I think in 2015, it was a very important year for us, and a lot of NGOs and NGOs, they got involved, and then Bangladesh got Bureau of Statistics, the main data agency in Bangladesh. They are very powerful, and then they got interested, and then we tested for piloting for them, and we did. Then we went to the Bangladesh community, and we got successful, and now they are trying to launch a very big project for Bangladesh, which is very important.
And then another one is simply, I think some of you may know that there is a MIT challenge on the Colorado. There is an app which is made by the citizens and jointly with the Bangladesh. And it's for the Islam community. And for Islam community and using that app, we are giving the services to the poor and vulnerable community. And for that project, we added a lot of buildings and lot of service points also. And in terms of the Bangladesh Electrical Society, and I can actually supported one part of the data that is called Generalia. That is also met. And also the Moldova market. And we added a lot of buildings and data with a lot of data. So a lot of activities with all the buildings. You can get Google and you can find all these data. And in 2015, that more, I joined the group, they got contract and they joined with us slowly, and we worked together. And then I approached the university that there should be more innovative sectors and then because I used it as the power for the people. Then we created some sectors like the Dhaka University sectors, Human University sectors, Jakarta University, Gujarat University, Dhaka College, some of the so the sectors were supported by the youth network and some are supported by the American Express. And some youth centers we see that they are there and Bangladesh CDS centers as well. And then I created some, because I am the only one person, I was doing training in a lot of places with very little and then I created some